Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So Game of Thrones Season 6 has already started casting some characters, and a lot of people think that Euron Greyjoy might be one of them. So I'm going to read this casting description and then explain him a little bit. So the casting description reads, a male pirate in his 40s to late 50s who has terrorized the seas all around the world. Cunning, ruthless, with a touch of madness. He's a dangerous looking man. So right away this screams Euron Greyjoy, one of Theon's uncles. He's a really big character in the books, but he hasn't really shown up till books 4 and 5 so far. That's why we haven't seen him on the show. There's another uncle called Victarion who kind of gets tied up with Euron's story. Until now, it just seemed like the show was going to completely cut out the rest of the Ironborn storyline, which everyone got really upset about because they're a really big group in the books that play a really big part in the War of Ice and Fire. It's just that anytime the show cuts characters out, like young Griff, it makes people feel like they're dead ends in the books. That isn't the case. I mean, young Griff plays a really big part in the books. It's just that the show tries to be a little more economic in the scope of the narrative. That's what happens when you only get 10 episodes a season. It's not confirmed that Euron is the character that they're casting. It's still a fan theory, but just based on that description and the way that they cast characters for the show, that is the best theory so far. Usually what happens is when they first start casting characters, like, right around this time of the year, they cast the really big ones first, the ones that they announce at Comic-Con every year, and then they pick up some of the lesser ones along the way. The latest I remember them casting someone in Season 4 was the Child of the Forest that we saw in the Season 4 finale. They didn't announce that till like November of 2013, I think. So even though they start shooting really early, they still cast people throughout the years they need them in episodes. It's just, the bigger characters they need in more episodes, so they have to cast them sooner. So regardless of who these really big people that they're just starting to cast right now are, we'll probably get to meet them at Comic-Con. Last year they announced the Sand Snakes, Doran Martell, Aereo, and the High Sparrow. It's really like the only new material that the show ever brings to Comic-Con. Like they don't bring trailers for the new season. In all fairness to the producers though, the reason they don't bring footage is because they haven't started shooting the new season yet, so there's nothing to show. But just to do a quick rundown of Euron in the books, he's Theon's oldest uncle. Theon's father, Balon Greyjoy's oldest brother. He's described as being handsome, but he's only got one eye, and he drinks this blue drink every night that gives his lips this constant bluish cast. He claims to have at one time had a dragon egg that he said he threw overboard in one of his moods. It sounds like he got really frustrated and drunk one night and just decided to chuck it overboard because he couldn't figure out how to hatch it. He claims to have sailed all the way to Asai, which is actually where Melisandre's from. It's on the other side of the eastern continent, so it's actually really, really far away. He even claims to have walked through the ruins of ancient Valyria. That's the place where Tyrion and Jorah went a couple episodes ago. In the timeline, right around when Season 1 is picking up, he's been banished from the Iron Islands for raping his brother Victarion's salt wife. If that doesn't seem bad enough, salt wives, you have to remember, are women that the Ironborn capture during raids and turn into bound concubines. So, already we're on shaky ground here. He raped his brother's concubine, who his brother himself had captured and had been raping. But as nuts as that all sounds, they still have a code that they live by. They're not allowed to kill kin, so as recompense, Euron was banished. So in the time that the show has been going on, as the story's been moving along, he's just been out sailing around. Maybe he knows where Gendry is, who knows. Victarion, in the context of the story, is the commander of the Iron Fleet. He stayed pretty close to the Seastone Chair, so he commands Balon Greyjoy's forces in the War of the Five Kings. The show, thus far, has given most of that storyline to Theon's sister, so it's possible if the show's going with Euron, they'll just completely cut out Victarion. They'll give all of Victarion's story to Euron. The reason everyone thinks it's going to be Euron and not Victarion is because George R. R. Martin describes Victarion as a dullard and a brute, and dullard just doesn't scream cunning as is described in this pirate casting call. He's still a pretty interesting character, he wears full plate mail, and he associates with a priest of the Red God, who's a character that the show might do. So I'm going to save him for later, just in case they do cast the character. The cool thing about the Ironborn is that it also kind of brings in some more context for the priests of the Red God. So, hopefully in Season 6, we will get to see the inside of a Red Temple, or at least get to learn more about the faith of the Red God. Most of the show thus far has been spent in Westeros. The dominant religion there is the Faith of the Seven. Melisandre and Thoros of Myr were actually sent to Westeros to try and get a foothold for the faith of the Red God, to try and spread that religion. That's why Melisandre was so disappointed in Thoros whenever she met him. He'd been sent to King's Landing and utterly failed in his mission. In addition to Euron and Victarion though, Balon actually has 2 other brothers. We might see one of the other ones. Just going in order, Euron is the oldest, then there's Victarion, then Euron, who actually died as a child, so we're never going to see him. Then there's Aeron, the damp hair. There is a scene in season 2 where Theon gets baptized by someone that looks like Euron, but he wasn't called Euron in the script, so he could be just some random character. The reason you should be excited about Euron Greyjoy, though, is that because of all of Theon's family, he is the most fun character. Most of the personalities in Theon's family flow from Balon Greyjoy. You know, there are a lot of variations. They're all very different characters. Euron himself is said to have always followed the old ways. They judge you based on your ability as a raider. Like the only jewelry they wear around are ornaments that they win in battle or spoils of war, like trophies that they wear around. I think one of the reasons why people like the Ironborn so much is just because they are so open about their lifestyle. Their default mode is to take what they want. Like raiding and being pirates are historically their main industry. That changed a little in recent years. Like they still reave and rape, taking whatever they want, but not nearly as much as they used to. Balon Greyjoy was suppressed after the Greyjoy Rebellion. That's like in the events leading up to season 1. So they were much quieter in recent years. Obviously the War of the Five Kings changed that though. Balon Greyjoy declares himself king of the Iron Islands and they start making war on the East Coast. The circumstances of Euron's return or his arrival in the story in person are kind of spoilery, so I'm not going to talk about those now. If you have read the books, please use spoiler tags. On the show, he's supposed to be in his 40s or 50s. In the books, Euron is only in his 30s. But you remember that everyone on the show is kind of aged up about 10 years. Like Jaime and Cersei are about 10 years older. They're in their 40s instead of their 30s. Tommen is probably the best example of that. In the books, he's only about 9 years old. Obviously, they're not going to make Natalie Dormer have sex with a little kid, so you get the idea. Most of the Ironborn we've seen on the show so far are fairly practical people. Like they have their own religion. They worship the drowned god. We've seen bits of that. Euron, though, as is described, has a touch of madness. So his ambitions are much, much grander. And we're kind of at that time in the story whereby things are reaching a crescendo. So you expect crazier and crazier characters to come on. That's one of the challenges of the show is that we approach like the final season is that the spectacles have to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Euron is a character that fits really well with that metaphor. But like I said, they made casting announcements for 11 other characters. So there's a lot of other people that we can talk about. I'll probably wait till after the season to do them. There's still a lot of things left that could happen. So, after the finale, it'll be a little bit easier to make predictions about which characters they're bringing on. Here's my big question for you guys, though. Do you think that the show is bringing on Euron Greyjoy? And if they do you think that they'll just, combine a couple other Ironborn characters and give that story to him? As much as the show cuts out, they still try to do relatively big storylines, but, sometimes they have to swap characters based on people that they've killed off or people that they cut out entirely. Speaking of which, George R. R. Martin actually just announced that he's not going to be writing any scripts for season 6. Some people are freaked out by this, but I actually think it's a good thing because he said it would take a month away from writing Winds of Winter. He just said that it takes him about 3 weeks to write a script, and then like a week after that to get back into book mode. So, what would you rather have, like a George R. R. Martin episode or Winds of Winter? The best theory right now is that, based on the pace of his writing, he'll finish somewhere around the beginning of season 6, or at least by the end of season 6. So as much as the show is passing the books in the timeline, they will kind of even up, around season 6. It's not going to be perfect, but if you're a book purist, you will have that material to read. Don't worry, when that does drop, I will give away a bunch of copies. The people that actually won books this year that won the signed copies that I sent out should be receiving them pretty soon. The other really cool thing about that too is later this year, George R. R. Martin is re-releasing the Dunk and Egg stories. Like he's just combining them all in a single book called A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. That's coming in October, so I'll give away copies whenever that happens. Until then, like the weekly giveaways, like right now, will still be the HBO Now subscription, but I'll probably do an extra special giveaway for the finale. My episode 8 video tonight will post right after the episode airs, so be sure to subscribe to get that. That's when the new round of the giveaway will start. If there are any bonus videos that you guys really want for next week, just be sure to leave me requests in the comments. So while you guys wait for that to post, you can click here for last week's episode, and you can click here to learn all about Maester Aemon. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.